It's all on you.
I know.
Reggie, if you do the angle thing like Brian
You don't have any further to go back.
Yep. Oh, okay. I was like, let me do it after. Yeah.
Just thinking.
That's great. All right. I think everyone's here. We're ready to get started.
Stop. There's a table under here. Stop.
There you go. Good.
We're all right.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We're not happy to be up here. The Republicans haven't seemed to figure out that the role of governing is not a game. This has just been yet another chaotic and just disastrous ploy by the Republicans to weaponize our institution for their own political game here. We've come across a very contentious election just a few months ago. If we learned anything collectively from that, it's just that everyday Michiganders are sick of the partisan divide, the political rhetoric. They want real solutions to lower costs, improve their lives, and this isn't it. This is Hall playing with vulnerable kids, families, and Michiganders all over the state just for his own personal power grabs, his own personal political game. This wasn't a transparent process with the two bills that were discharged today. I learned about them personally maybe 45 to 50 minutes before the vote. It is not a way that you conduct the budgetary process of this institution. Didn't go through committee, just did not have robust debate on both sides of the aisle. And that's just not how negotiations are supposed to work. Loosely, didn't need a lot of time to review the bills. They cut out 91 and 92% of general government funding. They cut out over 25% of our school aid budget. Critical programs that we fought hard as Democrats to get in, to have robust transportation services available around the state, to make sure that school lunches and breakfasts are free. I know I have my own kids as a parent, and I know the financial burden and time strain that has saved, hundreds of thousands of young families across our state. These are programs that help keep our kids' bellies full and allow them to receive an education, and they're wildly popular beyond any sort of partisan debate. And so why politicize the ability to feed a hungry child for your own political gain? I think that's more than just a talking point. I need people to really understand, why would you want to do that? There's obviously political debate out there and discourse on a whole bunch of issues, but feeding hungry kids, that ain't one of them. Now imagine if your child is not so lucky to be in full health. What if there's a heart defect there? God forbid, suffering with any sort of issue. What if your kid's suffering from autism? These are the critical services that get cut when you just make a budget in less than an hour and just put it on people and make them vote. Our caucus stands united in our anger and just of the distrust of weaponizing our institution here. And so, look, I think Speaker Hall is doing nothing more than admitting to the fact that he wants to shut down the government. It is a false choice to give a group of people an option to vote on a bill that reduces funding by 92% or shut down the government. You are effectively shutting down the government. And if there's no need for us to negotiate that way. The Democrats in the trifecta delivered a budget on time every time. It can be done when governing is not a game. When you take this job serious and you want to deliver for Michiganders, it is not hard to pick up a phone call and negotiate with the others in the room. We are in split government, and that means that the House Republicans need to work with Democrats, whether they want to or not, because his budget will not get passed without the support of Democrats across Lansing here. Now, it is important to realize that although the House Democrats lost majority in the Michigan House, we still have majority in the Michigan Senate and the governor's office. So we control 2/3 of the Lansing stool, 2 of the 3 legs. And so as far as I know, that's more than 50%. As far as I know, the Democrats are in majority. And so if you want to be serious about negotiating a budget, you need to work with the Democrats, whether he wants to or not. And so with that, we have a bunch of our caucus fired up here. I want to bring up Representative Weiss, who chaired our K through 12 budget. And yes, I'm sorry, it's audible here. We're going to be bringing up Representative Brenda Carter.
Thank you, Leader. I am totally outraged about this budget, okay? This budget is an all-out attack on our children, on our seniors, on our veterans. We're looking at cutting that school aid budget in our most vulnerable communities. And I'm talking about overcrowding in our classrooms, teachers who are already overburdened. We're talking about our kids as if this budget reflects a mentality that they just don't care about the future of our children. Shame on them. And then you're talking about DHHS. Come on now. We're in a climate right now where there's a lot of mental health issues, healthcare issues, and we're talking about taking away vital services in communities where we need it the most. With 47% of the people in this state living below the Alice population, and where they have to choose between their food and their medicine, why on earth would you want to do this? It doesn't make sense. It's almost like you don't care about the very people who sent you here to protect them. Yes, I am angry, and I will fight this to the end. And with that, I'll with my colleague right here. Go on, Regina. Tell them about it.
Thank you. I'm going to echo a lot of things that are already said. I cannot stress with enough emphasis how dangerous it is to come up with a budget on the fly that reduces school aid funding by 25%, that reduces the general fund budget by 92%, that cuts $5 billion from our schools. And remember, budgets, first and foremost, are a statement of your priorities and your values. What message are House Republicans and Speaker Hall sending right now about what their priorities and their values are? And, you know, there are things in the budget that we passed today that are good things, and there is a long list of things that are critical supports that our students need and that families need that we voted, not any of us up here, but that the legislature and the House voted today to cut from education and to cut from the general fund budget. Speaker Puri, or sorry, speaking it into the Leader Puri spoke about the school meals program, and that is something that our governor fought really hard to get done, and that is something that we as House Democrats have supported, and that has reduced costs for families across this state. That was completely slashed from this budget. What does that mean for you in your pocketbooks? That means next year when you're sending your children to school, they will not have free lunches when they go to school. They will not have free breakfast when they come to school. As costs are skyrocketing because of the foolery that's happening at the federal level, you're going to have to pay even more out of your pockets because of the foolery that's happening here in Michigan. And it is not acceptable. We also cut $1 billion in this budget. $1 billion was cut for at-risk students. Those are some of our most vulnerable students in the state. $1 billion. That is supporting students in every district across the state was slashed from this budget. We slashed transportation costs and funding for isolated and rural districts. This is funding that supports predominantly districts in Republican areas. And they just voted to slash their funding. I don't really understand the politics here because to me it's very simple. This is bad politics. This is bad policy. This is going to hurt our kids. And if this is some kind of negotiating art of the deal kind of tactic, it is dangerous. And we don't need this shit in Michigan. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to also probably be echoing a lot of the sentiments you've already heard. This is a sad day for Michigan's kids. Full stop. House Republicans voted to defund our schools by over $5 billion. Prior to this term, we actually increased school funding by nearly $2 billion. And when it comes to education, those House Republicans have shown time and again where they prioritize our kids. Time and again. From 2000 to 2019, Michigan ranked dead last in the country in school funding growth. The simple question I ask is, who was in charge most of that time? You have your answer. Additionally, since 2019, and especially in the last 2 years, we finally made kids a priority and we started giving schools the tools they need for our children to be successful. We need to continue that. Now, I often hear this is step one in a negotiating process. That's what I've heard over and over today on the House floor. If that is the case, if defunding our schools by over $5 billion is your starting point for a negotiation, then I would challenge you to reevaluate the values in which that starting point was rooted in. It's unconscionable. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Rep. Colazar. Today, House Republicans have stripped down our state budget that will hurt all Michiganders, but especially my district in Ypsilanti, where Eastern Michigan would not be able to be the leading institution in veterans being college graduates. We actually lead the nation in veterans being educated in the higher institutions. Michigan House Republicans don't care about veterans. That's what they said today. They stripped down our budget that included at-risk funding for our schools. This helps those students that need a little bit of extra help just to get them throughout the day and be educated. They don't care about our students here in Michigan. They gutted our environmental protections here in Michigan that has water quality standards. Republicans here in Michigan don't care about the Great Lakes state. They don't care about water quality and our environmental standards that we have in place. They cut funding for our courts. They cut it in half by 50% as we try to get our courts on one system, a statewide system, to be more efficient. They don't care about our courts. Simply put, House Republicans want to run this state into the ground the same way that the Trump administration is trying to run this country into the ground.
Yeah, that's right.
House Republicans aren't serious about a real budget. Democrats here are. At this time, I'll turn it over to Representative Glanville.
Nick Carroll. Yeah.
Waste, fraud, and abuse. That is what you saw on the House floor this afternoon. Republicans wasting the votes, the time, and the trust of Michiganders, perpetrating fraud by slashing the budget by 92%, and abusing the right to be office holders, the trust that they hold as public servants to represent every Michigander. Our kids don't vote for any one of us. I met a group of students just this morning before I came up for this shenanigans, and I told them, anytime you need something, you call my office. I said, you know what? You guys don't get to vote, but I represent you, and I will always cover you. You will always have me at your back and advocating in front of you when needed. This budget, as you have heard, damages every single institution here in the state of Michigan. There's not one thing that the Republicans today stand for. And on the day when the federal government is actively dismantling the federal Department of Education, they had the guts to cut our own education budget by $5 billion. If we don't have resources coming down from the feds, and we don't have resources at the state level, what are we going to do? Those Republicans, they love CTE. They're the ones who promoted CTE. They've promoted growth. They've promoted workforce development. And they cut it all today. They don't care. They don't care about the future of Michigan. They don't care about the today of Michigan, because the way we educate people sets us up for future success. And without higher ed, without Reconnect, without K-12, without childcare, none of that is going to happen. I don't know what their plan is, but this is not what Michiganders sent us to Lansing to do. And with that, I'll hand it back to somebody, Denise Menser.
The city of Mount Clemens has 15,697 residents. Our school system has a total of 823 students. Of those students, 98% live at or below the poverty level. Our median income is only $33,000. You can see how the food program, the free breakfast and lunch, made a massive difference in this community. We figured it out, it was about $600 per child for them to be fed in the schools. This cut is going to be catastrophic, and it's going to affect the children more than anything else. And it's going to affect the families who can no longer afford to feed them. It's going to affect the run on the food pantries, and the fact that that's been cut too. A lot of that's been cut too by our federal government. So this is immensely damaging to the students, to the population, to the parents of our districts. This is just absolute irresponsible craziness.
Thanks. One thing that we haven't heard about today is the 92% cut to our general budget. And I want to point out 4 things that were completely defunded. First of all, the Attorney General's office, completely defunded. Now, why would House Republicans who serve their President Trump, want to dismantle the Attorney General's office? Gee, could it be that she's standing up for the Michiganders that they are disregarding, that they are kicking to the curb? They want to silence her, and that's how they think they can do it. So that's the first thing. The next 3 things are complete defunding of the Department of Health and Human Services, the complete defunding of the Department of Natural Resources, and the complete defunding of the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. Now, I know there's a lot of hunters across the aisle and a lot of farmers across the aisle. What are they going to say to their buddies? Sorry, we ain't got no money for you. Don't come get a license. Freaking chaos. But the reason I care about this is because we have a bird flu problem in Michigan. And those 3 departments are the departments that will attack it. We need to prevent it from becoming a human-to-human pandemic. I don't know if Republicans want another pandemic. They didn't seem to like it that much the last time. So maybe they shouldn't be completely defunding those 3 departments. In addition, anybody who receives Medicaid help for nursing homes, completely defunded. So sorry to all the seniors who are in nursing homes. I don't know if little Prince Speaker Hall is going to go tell the seniors, SOL, get your butt out of here. So somebody needs to figure out how this is going to be fixed. And if we say this is just the beginning of a process, what we need to keep in mind, if this is really the beginning of a process, the Appropriations Committee can meet every week. They can meet every single week to prove. They can prove that they want to actually be negotiating. They can be taking up budget bills. They can prove it. If this is the last time that we see a budget bill, that's really what they're trying to do, is shut down the government.
Speaking of the Appropriations Committee, right? I'll say this. Today we really saw the heat plan take a polar plunge, to quote Dylan Regular. The T in the heat plan stands for transparency, and we just saw the most not transparent budget process, I think, in memory, where we saw billions of dollars of cuts and spending be decided on in silos, quite literally in a room where no one is in there seeing what's going on. What I'll say is this to Rep. Reinigan's point. The Appropriations Committee is right to meet every single day. We'll meet right now. We'll meet tomorrow morning. We'll meet on the weekends. I'll buy lunch. Let's get this done. House Democrats have always stood for responsible budgeting. We did it for 2 years. We showed Republicans how to do it in a trifecta. 2 bipartisan budgets, right? And right now what we're seeing is this, and what I want to caution folks that are here is this. We're seeing billions of dollars being taken off the table to be kept as a negotiating tool for other things. It could be roads to backfill schools, and it could be for billionaire tax cuts. Very well could be that. We're already seeing, and I'll tell you, it's not a secret, we make $70,000 up here. Lowering the personal income tax from 0.25% to 0.05% will save me $100 a year on my tax. If you ask me if I'm okay with the state government having that $100, so a kid doesn't have to go hungry in school, so a teacher can be paid a livable wage, so state police can patrol our highways, so farmers can have the support they need, and so we can track things like the avian flu, I'll tell you, keep that $100. But you know who isn't? The billionaire class in our state. My comrade Dylan Wegela here has been really consistent on this theme for a long time. But we ought to be looking at, when we talk up here, all my colleagues here are sharing stories of real people. Denise Spencer's talking to the families of Mount Clemens. Carrie Reinigans is talking about the families in her district. Jimmy Wilson was talking very eloquently here about the impact this is going to have for our veterans community. Ask the Republicans who their budget bill benefits. Just ask that one question. Start the conversation there. We can tell you who our budgets benefit. We can even bring them here. We can have them testify. We can have them talk to you. Can they say the same? Can they do the same? They can't. They cannot, because their budget benefits a small class of folks in our state that, quite simply put, want to privatize every aspect of our government. And that's something we're not going to go along with. If they want to get a budget done the right way, they know where we're at. I'm here every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I will be here every day. Every day. We'll do it. So with that, I know my colleagues had some questions. If anyone has questions, yeah?
Yeah, so open up to questions.
Yeah, me and the leader will take questions now. If anyone has any, we're happy to do it. Oh, man. Oh, please. Yeah, Beth, yeah. Beth.
More and more money into education without getting any results. Do you guys want to respond to that at all?
So Beth, I'll let Carol go first, and then I'll say something.
So when you look at education spending over time, we're comparing constantly apples to oranges, because what we are looking at is raw dollar figures. When you adjust for inflation, you will notice that there's a direct correlation between the amount of money that we've been spending per pupil and the drop in our NAEP scores, because we are spending actually almost $2,000 less per pupil if you compare it to $2,000. So when you look at the adjustment for inflation, yes, in raw dollars we've gone up, but that's because expenses have gone up. That's because we've seen a significant increase in kids who need special accommodations with the rise in autism and ADHD. That's because we're investing in dyslexia programs now. That's because CTE costs money. So does just general technology. Like, the cost of education has shifted. And when we hear those numbers, we're just talking about what it costs to educate a kid 20 years ago. And that is not the same cost today. And the dollar doesn't go as far today. So we really need to start looking at that in comparable numbers.
So you think the governor can do that math before she said it in the state of the state?
I don't know who did the math for the governor in the state of the state. And I'm not sure, what, I don't know how her speech was
I think
written.
that's a good question for the governor about how she did her math.
Yeah. There you go.
I like to, can I just speak to this question as well? Because what I am quite certain the governor of the state of Michigan was not proposing was holding school children essentially hostage as a negotiating chip as to whether they will have a full belly. I am a former special education teaching assistant. I have a background in social work. The research and the science is clear that when children are hungry at school, they can't learn. And so we, the Democrats, led, and the governor led on getting universal school meals for the first time in this state. And that is the kind of thing that Speaker Hall and the Republicans are holding hostage at this time. So I think we can talk about making sure that we are moving in the right direction with our funding, but one of the specific things that they are excluding in this ridiculous 25% cut in school aid funding is literally food for children in our schools. And I think that says a lot about the Republicans' priorities right now and who they are, that they would literally be willing to keep children hostage in a negotiation, which really is more like a hostage situation.
So where does the budget process go from here?
So I think thank you. I think the budget process right now is ongoing, right? Let's be clear. This is the Republicans' opening position in a negotiation. But when you start, here's the thing that I want folks to understand. When you start a budget, you're saying where we ought to be investing in. We all understand the state legislatures, the state's job is to provide services for its residents. Our shareholders are the taxpayers that live here, right? The Republicans' opening position is cutting $5 billion on school aid, not funding DHHS, not funding Eagle, not funding DNR. So I think what you'll see happen now is a conversation that's going to be played out through the Senate and back into the House. I think, and I don't want to speak for any other legs of the stool here, but I think this budget that was voted out started in such a drastic position that honestly, it's not worth entertaining at this time until they show that they're willing to be serious about where the state should be going. This is not a serious budget they put forward. It's very unserious.
You guys talked a lot about process today, and we heard from House Republicans voted at some point today, talking about past budget processes and how budgets have been presented to the legislature, to the House, the chambers for a vote, kind of in the middle of the night and without much time to look through it. That was in a Democrat trifecta. So what do you have to say to that?
So I think Zach Gorchow might be a good person to ask for the archive precedent. But what I'll say is we had more than one committee hearing before we voted on $1 billion budget. They had one committee hearing. We had and we were very transparent in the last 2 years, I think. We had months of committee hearings. We had conference. We had reports that were published. We had amendments that were offered on the floor. We had a whole process that played out. I think you can't even compare the two. I mean, you're talking about billions of dollars in 30 minutes. I mean, this is like robbing a bank, what they just did. Yeah, okay. Any other questions? No? Cranes? Anything with cranes? No? All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Do you want us to stay?
Yeah, hey, everyone stay for a second.